Welcome to V is for Victory, a podcast about how small businesses overcome big battles. I'm your host, Jill Miller of Vera Creative, a boutique marketing firm in the Chicagoland area where I'm also a part-time professor of an advertising course. Join me as I talk with entrepreneurs about the challenges they faced as well as their strategies for success. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 31 of V is for Victory. I am here with Scott Miller, best-selling author, 25-year executive, and host of the #1 best leadership podcast. Wow, I really messed that up. And then the next thing I'm supposed to say is struggling father of 3 boys. And I just want to say that I'm struggling podcast host right now. But Scott, thank you for your time today and welcome to the show.
Well, it was a delightful interview, Jill. It's my honor. Thank you for the platform today. Excited to be here.
Yeah, awesome. So tell me a little bit about, let's back up. In 25 years as an executive, how did you rise to a high-level position in marketing?
I started on the front line, just like most executives. I started after my 4-year career with the Walt Disney Company. I moved from Florida out to Utah, where the Franklin Covey Company is located. Talk about a big change from Florida to Utah. And I started in the front line as a salesperson, selling our leadership solutions to universities, school districts. And then I moved to the corporate side. I did a stint in the London office and then became a general manager, a sales manager, and then a sales director, and then a sales vice president. And then I had a marketing background from my college education and just kind of worked my way up as a credible, competent, hardworking contributor, willing to move, willing to change my skills, willing to adapt, willing to do whatever was asked of me and more. And then I became the vice president of marketing and business development. I became the executive vice president. I became the chief marketing officer, had really 9 careers inside a 25-year career in one company. And so I really moved from the front line to the C-suite. And if you look back at me, at my career, it's because I was agile. I was flexible. I was nimble. I was willing to move outside my comfort zone. I was willing to disrupt myself, disrupt my skill set, my knowledge, where I lived. I moved around the world for the company and it paid off. And I don't think those are anything of that I just said was unique to me. I think those are just really good principles to follow on how to grow your career.
Yeah, I have to agree. And I'm kind of chuckling to myself because first I got to say, I'm looking up who you are and I'm seeing your name, Scott Jeffrey Miller. And my husband's name is Jeffrey Miller. And when you talk about flexibility and being willing to move and do whatever it takes, my husband is the most type A rigid routine person on planet Earth. And I just I laugh at the incredible difference in mindset. Talk to me about what it is you think. I feel like it's a fearlessness that you likely possess because not a lot of people can just pick up and move and have faith that it's all going to work out. What is it that you think you possess that allows you to just be able to kind of blow where the wind takes you, so to speak?
I don't know that I'm a fearless person, Jill. Your husband and I might have more in common than you think. I think I take calibrated risks. I think through things fairly well. I ask smart questions. I'm a fairly logical thinker. So if this happens, what will I do then? And if that were to happen, and if this goes wrong, what's my backup plan? So I am responsible for my own results in life. I don't blame anybody for my circumstances or my outcomes. I metaphorically carry my own weather. I think I recognized early in my career that the people who were going to be rewarded with more responsibility and more opportunities and travel and growth and investment in their own skills were those who were the most agile, those who were willing to, move from this job to that job. I don't think I like stability. I think I like instability. It keeps me on my game. Now, that I appreciate stability for all the obvious values, but I think the people who have stability as their #1 professional value, they're never going to grow. they're not going to get promoted. They're not going to earn more money. They're not going to get the big challenges and get to travel around the world. So
Yeah.
that's okay if stability is your number one value, but with that comes good and bad consequences.
That's an excellent point. And what do you say to somebody who says they want it or acts like they want it in terms of that professional or personal growth, um, but is stuck? What would you say to somebody like that? Any personal
Yeah.
stories you might use to inspire them, or
I have one exact story. I'd say, show me, don't tell me, right? Show
yeah,
me. Here's a great example. I mentioned this just earlier in our conversation. I think most people understand the value of identifying their personal values. This is not a new concept, right? We all have personal values. I don't think most people know their own values. If you were to ask people, they would make something up: harmony, peace, tranquility, equity, right? And tomorrow they would find five more words.
yeah.
My personal values are purpose, health, integrity, loyalty, positivity, abundance, and learning. I'll repeat them: purpose, health, integrity, loyalty, positivity, abundance, and learning. Seven of them. PhilPal, PhilPal. I decided them intentionally, committed to the memory, organized them hierarchically, and I live my life in alignment with them. I can tell you my seven personal values. I make every decision in life in alignment with them. Take it a step further. Jill, I don't think most people have developed their professional values, which I think are different than your
Yeah,
personal values.
yeah,
My number one professional value is to maximize my income, period. And I don't care what anybody thinks about it because it's my professional value. My second professional value is working with and for a brand that I respect and who respects me. My third professional value is working with and for other people that I like and trust. I'm very clear on those three professional values. Now, to your request for a story, I have someone who I coach that tells me their number one professional value is maximizing their income. And I say, no, it's not, because you're not willing to move. And you're in sales. You cannot earn more money if you're not willing to relocate and
mm-hmm,
travel a lot.
mm-hmm,
Your
mm-hmm.
number one professional value is at odds with your number one personal value, because their number one personal value is their family, their parents, their grandparents, their uncles and their cousins, and they're not willing to compromise that personal value to accomplish their professional value. And by the way, there's no harm in that. But you have to know what your personal and professional values are to know if they are congruent or if they are in conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would argue that to all of your perhaps listeners that are looking to grow their careers or grow their influence or grow their income, the first step is to identify both your personal and professional values and determine, are they in conflict? And if so, that's okay. What are you going to do about it?
That's awesome. I love this. I'm writing it all down. um, so I love when you said show me. So, my listeners know a lot about me, but you don't. Let me just share with you quickly that I'm a yoga teacher, as well as a marketing consultant, and I teach at a university as well. And um, in yoga, gosh, there was this really profound moment at one of my teacher training courses where the person I was being trained under had somebody up at the front of the room and was really challenging them to get present, like I was talking about before we started recording, right? About I was not present today or leading up to this podcast because I
Sure.
made so many mistakes. So talking about getting present. And the I don't know what the conversation was, because I don't remember, because that's not important, right? That's not the profound part. But the profound part was when he said something like, okay, but that's in the past, and so show me where the past is, or you're worried about that and that's in the future. Show me where the future is. And obviously the person standing there can't physically show you the past, and they can't physically show you the present. All they can, or the future, all they can be is like, right here, right now. This is the present. This is me standing in this room. And I think that we spend so much time up in our heads in the past and in the future, and so little time in the present. And I love how you can clarify the personal and the professional values and then see where they intersect and really pinpoint what's holding you back. And maybe that exists in the past, or maybe that exists in the present. Does that make sense?
It does, and it does, and I think I'll dovetail them together. I think your values change over time, not
Mm-hmm.
daily, not monthly, but your values have changed now that you have a newborn baby and you're the mother of two children. Your values are fundamentally different than they were 5 years ago, are they not? Before you had
Yeah.
children,
Yeah.
and they're going to be different, in the future as well. But I think that exercise is evolutionary to know that your values will change in the future, and they might even help to instruct your future. I don't live in the past. I also don't live in the present, which I don't think is a good thing. I live in the future.
Yeah.
My wife tends to live in the present, and she often critiques me that I'm never present because I'm always living in the future. I'll be at lunch and I'll be asking, where are we going for dinner?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's my
And so
husband
I'm
for
always
sure.
focused on, and there's good and bad in
Yeah.
that. I,
Yeah.
I need to live more in the present. I think I am very much in control of every aspect of my life because I live in the future, because I recognize I want to be in control of my future. I don't want someone else controlling my future.
Mm-hmm.
So I tend to live there so that I can create it. And there's both benefits and detriments because I'm always living in the future.
That little bit uh, need for control, though, because I'm the same way. And I'm kind of a person that if something happens, I'm already acting. I'm already acting on it. How can I be proactive? How can I,
Because that's
solve,
where
plan?
conflict comes, Jill.
Yeah.
Now, I'll tell you, I think nearly all, if not all, conflict in life comes from mismatched or unfulfilled expectations. I'm
Oh,
in a
yeah.
situation right now with someone who's my interior designer, and I'm bracing perhaps litigation with this person. I've never been sued or sued anybody in my life.
Wow.
I'm 53 years old, and I'm getting ready, I fear, to be entering litigation with a vendor of mine. And I'm trying my best to control the situation and not do that. I do not want to do that for them or for me, but I'm very much thinking about, okay, so what is the next step? And then what is the next step? And if they don't do
Mm-hmm.
this, then where am I going to go? Versus, having them and perhaps their agenda or their complacency bring me massive pain,
Yeah.
emotional and financial. And so I think in some cases, living in the future allows you to protect yourself from mismatched or unfulfilled expectations.
Yeah, I think right now the world is in a massive state of pain avoidance. Like we're doing everything we can do to avoid future pains when we don't know the future. Just want to throw that out there. But backing up just a little bit, I wanted to ask you, when you talk about after you become a parent, your thinking becomes fundamentally different. At what point in your career did you start having children? And do you think that you slowed down at all, or were you always willing to move and do what it takes? And I have to say, and I'm kind of getting off on a tangent, and I realize this, but I have to say, I think your children, yes, they're very, they can adapt as well. So you look at children in the military who are moving all the time, or of military families who are moving all the time, and kind of uprooting your children and them being able to sometimes adapt better than the adults. But you know, I definitely think that as parents, we consider the children heavily when we make decisions. So, at what point in your career did you start having children? Did it stop any of your upward mobility, do you think? Or did you just kind of bring them along for the ride and they learn to be flexible as a result?
Well, technically, as you know, my wife had the three children,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So,
Thank you.
I've always got to clarify that. Um, so I had a bit of a unique situation. My wife and I have 12 years between us. I'm I'm 12 years older than she is. I'm 53 and she's younger. And we got married when I was 41. And so we had 3 boys in 5 years. So I was an older parent. She was in her late 20s and 30s, and I was in my late or not mid 40s. So I was single up until I got married. Of course I was, right? But I had never been. I was single till I was 40 something one or something like that. So I had children
Right.
later in life and had a very established career. So I did most of my moving around prior to being married at age 41. We'll establish that.
Gotcha.
Second, I had the enormous benefit of having built a career that was strong enough, both in its stature and income, where my wife, who was very educated, in fact, more educated than me, and very competent, where she was privileged. Some days she would disagree, but she was privileged to be able to stay at home full time with our 3 boys. So my career was not as the primary parent at home, it was my wife, and she sacrificed, her career to do that. And that still is the case with our 3 boys that are now 7, 9, and 11. So I've been privileged to have had, my wife be able to be the stable factor of staying at home while I've jetted around the world. At the same time, I have recognized that my number one job in life is not as chief marketing officer or author or podcast host, it's as father. And my job as a human being is to now help shepherd these 3 young boys to become gentlemen in a very ungentlemanly world.
Oh, that's a whole podcast right there, that statement.
It is true. It is
Uh-huh.
true. So now I am at the place in my career where I value navigating these 3 boys more than I value additional $5,000.
For
I
sure.
value attending their soccer games more than I value the next podcast. So I'm
Hmm.
having to make sacrifices in our lifestyle, in our savings, and our retirement, and our future. Although, I'm not exactly on the verge of bankruptcy, my values have shifted to make sure that I do the appropriate job to both provide for them, right? Provide for them economically, materially, culturally, educationally, emotionally. So I've been in a bit of a privileged position, but I'll tell you, I lived my life in a way early on to where I set myself up for success. By the way, I've been fired. I've had lots of financial setbacks in life. My life hasn't been perfect. It's been blessed and privileged compared to many. I also have outworked most everyone I know in life. So I didn't, drop into, you know, enormous privilege by any stretch. So I don't know that my lessons are replicable for many people other than I have an
Hmm.
indefatigable work ethic. And I have been very clear on where in my life I am. And there are seasons to work and there are seasons to repair. There are seasons to build. There are seasons to grow. There are seasons to plant and there are seasons to harvest. I tell you, my friend Jillian Michaels, the famous coach and
Yeah, yeah.
nutritionist, she said once on my radio program, you can have everything in life. You just can't have it all at the same time.
Yeah, that's so good.
And I think that's really sound advice, and I'm trying to live my life as much in accordance with that as possible.
I love that. So I hear the word replicable, and I 110% agree. And in my personal approach to consulting with a business is always like, you're not going to learn how to grow your business. You're not going to learn how to really grow yourself, I don't think, by replicating somebody else's success. I cannot stand webinars personally because they tell you what but not how, and the how piece is going to be different for every single business owner. Do you find that to be true then as well?
I agree with certain parts of what you said, and I'll challenge some others. I definitely agree that we can't be someone else. I don't have your education. I don't have your parents' wealth. You don't have my parents' education or wealth. I don't have your good looks. I don't have your personality. You don't have my, you get the point, right? Is
Yeah.
we have to know what our assets are, our strengths and our weaknesses, and leverage them to the best of our ability. I think the comparison conundrum is a
Hmm.
cancer inside of humanity, right? All of us do it. I do it. You do it. We all do it. Well, her post got this many downloads and my webcast got this. You get the point, right? It's
Yeah.
something that we all do as humans. And the more we're aware of it, the more we can check ourselves on it. And I do think that once we check our egos, there's so much to learn from everybody else. So why is their book successful? Why is their Instagram more powerful than mine? Why is their career growing faster than mine? What are they doing that I could replicate? Oh, I see. They don't share everything on their mind. They have a filter. Oh, I see. They paid the price to go back to get an advanced degree. Oh, I see. They read 4 books every month for 10 years. Oh, I see. They put themselves out there on LinkedIn and they've written 400 LinkedIn columns and I've not written any. Oh, I see. Their columns are riddled with spelling errors, but I was so, fixated on having one column be perfect, I put nothing out there. So I think there's a lot to learn from other people and their boldness and their courage and their reinvention and their ability to bruise hard and heal fast. So I think there's a lot to be learned by other people's paths and journeys. Take what's replicable and leave what's not.
Yeah, I think, why is it that people maybe aren't asking why? I think I find myself asking why a lot and not understanding a lot, but also never getting any answers. So whether I don't spend time looking for the answers, that could be one thing, but sometimes I just I just can't see why somebody has 1 million followers, or I don't get it. And it could be, I don't know, it could be my age, and that could be an excuse too, because marketing is very, very different, even from when I was in grad school to now. You know what I mean? And trying to keep up with influencers and this platform and that platform, I find very challenging. So again, just kind of a little sidebar, but yeah.
Yeah, I can relate to that. You know what I've learned in life is everything happens for a reason. You just have to understand that reason. Here's a good example. I have a friend that has, 100 million views on his TikTok channel. And I hired him to coach me on my own social media. And I kept saying, so I don't understand. 12 million people watch this? Why? This is like the stupidest thing ever.
Yeah.
And then he said to me, well, maybe to you, but let me tell you who does find it fascinating. And then he said, it's people that watch this video game and they play with this kind of character. And this was the jingle and the background. And they found it funny that I was doing this as a school teacher. And then I said, oh, okay, you're right. I'm not 19 years old. And I don't know about that video game. I've never heard that song. And I have no idea what you're talking about. But now that you explain it to me, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think the more questions we ask and get answered, the more we peel the onion, the more we understand, everything happens for a reason. Just have you kind of checked your ego to understand, what are there, 7.5 billion people in the world? Very few of them are like you.
Mm-hmm.
But there are enough like you to go find those people who are like you, and they are your follower. They are your reader. They are your subscriber. They are your customer. They are your friend.
Yeah. Taking time to understand the target, I think, marketing 101.
But you'd be surprised how few of us do that, because we've been taught to, boil the ocean and what is the total addressable market, and that, yes, your book is for everyone, or your podcast. No, it's not. Seth Godin, the famous marketer, blogger, and author, talks about, instead of your total addressable market, which is taught in most business schools, you should be focused on what is your smallest viable market. Who are the fewest number of people that you can gain the attention and loyalty of to build your business, to build your platform, to create influence? What is the fewest number? I don't want 1 million TikTok followers if I can accomplish what I want to accomplish with 3,000.
Mm-hmm. Quality over quantity, for
sure.
Because
now I gotta respond to 1 million people versus respond or be hated by 1 million people versus be hated by 3,000. I'd much rather be hated by 3,000, be hated by 1 million.
I agree.
Ask Chrissy Teigen how that's going.
Oh man. Oh, I love it. Okay, let's jump into then owning your mess. What does owning your mess mean to you, or how you project that into the world for them to understand?
Sure. So, as you know, I am the author of a best-selling book series called Own Your Mess. The first book was Management Mess to Leadership Success: 30 Challenges to Become the Leader You Would Follow. The second book was Marketing Mess to Brand Success, also 30 challenges. And next year, I'll release Job Mess to Career Success, followed by Communication Mess to Influence Success, and 6 more in that series.
Wow.
And it really all started on the value proposition, Jill, of, I think too often people don't own their mess. Everybody's got a mess going on, a mess in their job, a mess in their marriage, a mess in their business. Nobody's life looks as good as their Instagram portrays it. And
Mm-hmm.
I think to be a great leader of people, formal or informal, you got to own your mess, because you know what? Everybody knows what your mess is anyway. Everybody's talking about it. So why not just disempower them and own it? Because when you own your mess, you make it safe for others to own theirs. And I'll tell you, I think the best leaders, Jill, are those that exercise the power of vulnerability and self awareness, and they use their own messes to teach from them. Not gratuitously, not open kimono on everything, but they are comfortable enough to say, hey, gather around. Let me tell you the biggest sale I ever screwed up. Let me tell you when and why I was fired from my first job. Let me tell you why this went south and it was a big mistake for me, and this person had to, litigate against me. Now, again, you don't want to use your job or your business as a confessional, but there's so many lessons that secure and humble, vulnerable leaders can share that can build loyalty, create transparency, and allow your employees to say, well, gosh, if Scott's going to own his mess, then, I should own mine as well. And I think every leader wishes their team members and their employees would own their messes as well, because that's how you learn and that's how you move beyond them and not repeat them. So I'm a big proponent of owning your mess and teaching through them.
What are we doing as a society or as parents that raise people to play the blame game versus own their mess?
Well, I don't know that the opposite of owning your mess is the blame game, although I like your positioning on that. I think the opposite of owning your mess is ignoring it and portraying that everything is just fine.
Okay.
That doesn't necessarily mean you're blaming somebody else.
Inauthenticity. Yeah.
But I do think there is a lot of blaming, of course, going on, because that's what our politicians tend to model. I mean, if you look at the last presidency, I don't think anybody would accuse that person of ever once taking responsibility for anything. It was a master blamer, period. I don't care if you voted for him or didn't vote for him. I think that's a pretty common, a masterful communicator and manipulator.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people see that on TV. They think that's leadership.
Mm-hmm.
That's not leadership. That's something else for a different podcast. I believe that the opposite of owning your mess is owning up to it, or the opposite of owning your mess is not talking about it, is being embarrassed by it, is feeling like people are going to judge you or dislike you or not think that you're what they thought you are. Let me tell you, you are not what most people think you are.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that you don't have a brand, that you work hard to maintain that brand, but I just generally think people are scared, not of failure. They're scared of having other people see them fail. I learned that from Rachel Hollis, and I've taken that to heart. Most people aren't scared of failure, because we all know that there kind of is no failure. There's just only lessons that hopefully you learn from. But to the extent that you're scared of having other people know that your marriage is not as great as they think it is, or that your credit score is 200 points less than they would guess, or your 401k has 1 comma and not 2, most people won't talk about that because they don't want to burst the bubble of what other people think of you. When the fact of the matter is, one of my friends once said something to me, Jill, that was profound. She said, quote, "We think they don't know. They do," end quote.
Yeah.
Most people know the truth about what's going on. So just own it, learn from it, teach from it, model from it, and take responsibility for your actions. And don't underestimate the power of an excuse-free apology.
Mm. I like that. Okay, so let me challenge then or rephrase the question. Why is it, do you think, or what's inhibiting people from being able to have others see them fail? Like, where is this coming from? Why is it ingrained in so many people that they feel like transparency is not an option?
Well, because everybody knows now you have a brand, right? And I don't know about you, but the brands that sell are usually those that are aspirational. I mean,
Yeah,
I was
okay.
on a previous podcast where I said to someone, if you think people watched the Kardashians because of their formal education and their talent, you're wrong. People watched them because people wanted their Range Rover and their Bentley and their 14 Gucci purses and their lifestyle and their jets. They watched them because these people geniusly built an aspirational lifestyle. You didn't really know what was going on behind the scenes. They made some things up to create conflict, right? Because that's what makes a good reality series. And then maybe they did a better job than others at being vulnerable. I don't know. I mean, I don't care and I don't know. There probably should be an MBA program around just the Kardashians, right? And their success at becoming the most powerful brands probably in human history. So
I
I
can
think
confidently say I have never watched a single episode, and I'm proud of
there you go.
it.
You are in the minority.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm sure.
uh, but I think to answer your question, all of us are more comfortable living behind a brand that is aspirational.
Yeah.
Duh, right? I mean, I want people to think I'm successful. I want people to think I'm nice and kind and friendly and abundant and generous and smart and helpful. And of course, I want people to see it. I don't want people to think that I'm scarce or stingy or greedy or mean or a phony. It's a challenge to balance, right? Your authentic self with your aspirational self. It's a challenge to both own your mess and also own your success. One of my biggest challenges is, who's going to hire a guy to keynote your conference after I've written 10 books about all my messes? Well, did the guy actually do anything that succeeded? Right? So, I mean, one of my challenges is to make sure that, I'm seen as both a failure and a success. That I'm seen as the guy who both has lots of things to teach you, both from my messes and also from my successes. Most leadership books are not usually written around a CEO's messes in life. They're usually written around all of their triumphs and lessons to learn from their genius and their success. And my books tend to be a little bit.
Yeah, it's like, how much do I reveal about myself or my brand that will allow people to identify me, but at the same time gain their trust and kind of follow me along for the ride?
Well said. That was a truth bomb, just right there. Um, I think there's so much generosity and abundance that everybody could be more participatory in by sharing the good and the bad, right? Sharing your mistakes, sharing your lessons, sharing your learnings. In fact, I tend to learn more about how to have a successful marriage by being coached by people who are divorced than by people who've been married for 40 years.
Mm.
I
Because
learned
you
more.
because you look
Sorry.
at them like because you look at them and you're like, okay, so like that's what not to do, or that's or
Yes,
you it's
yes, that's
easier
what
to
got them
say
in
like,
trouble. That's the
yeah,
mistake they made.
and
That
like
yes, they know. People know why they got divorced.
or
They know
like,
why their
yeah,
spouse left them. Yeah.
right,
I
right.
learned more about growing my business from people who have had bankruptcies and failures than I do people who've grown businesses that are wildly successful. By the way, I have both kinds of people in my life, right? I don't just go to every failure in the world, right, to understand, but I've had failures as well too. I can tell you as much about how to launch a successful book for my books that have flopped, for my books that have been Wall Street Journal bestsellers. I just generally like to learn the underbelly from people, because I think that's where the true growth comes from. And it
Yeah.
also helps me. Oh, there's a pothole. I'm going to step around it. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
there's a pothole. I'm going to jump over it. Versus, let me see what's down there. Yeah, I don't need to see what's down there. I don't know it's a pothole until someone's told me, oh, look ahead, there's a pothole, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff. Okay. So give me an example then of, can you give me an example? Because I can't think of one right now, but hopefully you have plenty. You identify a mess. Like, what's the process? You identify the mess. Then how do you clean it up? How do you own up to it? How do you discern whether or not what messes you're sharing? There's like 10 questions in there.
Yeah, I think it's all situational, right? I mean, if I'm in a leadership situation and I'm coaching salespeople, and I see a pattern of behavior going on, I will pull from one of my experiences how I did the same, how I fell into the same trap they're finding in, so that they can relate to me and they find me credible. I don't usually teach through my successes. I usually teach through the blind spots that I had, or the blind spots that I think they have, or I'll share one of my messes in a genuine attempt to build collegiality. I've been there. I've done it. I've struggled. Here's what I learned. Here's what I want you to learn. And so I calibrate my sharing, right? Sometimes I overshare. One of my faults is that
Yeah, mine too.
as a
Mm-hmm.
Catholic, right, lifelong Catholic, I tend to
You
use the
confess.
world a little bit as my confessional, right? But I think it's just know your audience, and know when to share a success that will be a teaching moment. That's not you bragging, not you intimidating. I think what the right situation and story and lesson is to share in the right setting by asking yourself, what do I want to accomplish? How do I want to show up? What do
Mm-hmm.
I want them to do, feel, and know as an outcome? Do I want them to relate to me? Do I want them to know that this struggle is real and I've been there? Do I want them to see how to get to the other side? Do I want them to know here's how I dealt with that when I faced it, and here's how I succeeded by going this direction versus that direction? I think it changes by age of your child, it changes by maturity of your marriage, it changes by your title or position and circumstance you're in with your colleagues. Don't always share a success. Don't always share a mess. Don't always share a story about you. Perhaps share it about somebody else's failure or
Mm-hmm.
somebody else's success. You know, just have lots of drawers to draw upon and know which one is right with high EQ in the setting. Know your circumstance. Know your
Yeah.
audience.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say two things with that. I think it comes down to, can you accomplish, when you ask yourself the questions, what is it that I want my audience to do or know or feel as a result of me
Right,
putting this out there, is a
right.
little bit like, well, you can put it out there and you can want that, but whether or not they take it and interpret it and see it the way you intended it is one thing. And I think only your true audience is going to. Um, so another reason, I guess, and another point scored for not trying to be all things to all people.
Well said. Well said, Joe.
Yeah, I think, this particular conversation for me, I think has really just opened my eyes to, like, as strange as it is, I'm not learning anything from the things that I'm doing that aren't working for my business right now. And so this is it opens up a lot for me, and I personally want to thank you for that. And let me just share with you like a little bit about a conversation, a situation that I'm talking about. So, like, I just recently, for many many years, I taught at a yoga studio, and unfortunately it closed down, and I kind of once children and moved further away from the studio. I wasn't teaching as much. But for me, yoga teaching is great because a little bit about what we were talking about earlier, it's almost like when I talk, I don't know like where it comes from, but it just, things come up and out of me that I'm like, oh, I need to apply that in my own life. It's almost like I'm coaching and meditating for myself, even though I'm speaking out loud to a group of people. I'm helping myself. It's like my self-help tool is, just getting up and teaching yoga for an hour out loud in front of people. Um, so it's so good for me to have a space to do that in. And since I stopped teaching, I don't really care for online teaching. I did some audio classes, threw up a website, did that whole thing. It gets some plays, some listens, but not nearly as many as I would like. And I know people like my classes from the feedback I've been given. Um, and so that's not the issue. Like, I know it's not my competence, it's not my understanding of a posture, it's not my delivery, it's nothing like that. Once people take classes, they really like it. Now, how do we get like the repeat business? So I have a brand, it's called Pop Up Power Yoga, and my intention is to partner with other businesses and have them just basically allow me to host in their space. That's twofold, right? I get to teach yoga. They get to, have people physically in their space that may not have otherwise been in their space. Sometimes I question if business owners see it like that, because the amount of no's that I get when I present the idea to business owners, I get way, way, way many more no's than yeses. So that's the challenge. The challenge is, it's a little bit twofold. It's like, why are businesses saying no to this opportunity that I think is just so peaches and cream? and and how come people keep showing up in one spot, and yet when I try to host in in a different spot, they're not showing up in that spot? Like, what is it about that location that drew people? I don't get it. So it's like there's so many questions that I ask that go unanswered, and I don't think that I'm learning. I don't know.
Well, I actually enjoyed listening to your journey there. I know our time is ending here shortly.
Yeah.
And here's what I would say, and this may or may not be the right advice for you, but it might be great advice for one of your listeners right now.
Yeah.
Are you focused on your needs versus their needs? Are you asking them, what are you trying to accomplish? What do you
Yeah.
need? How
Yep.
can I help you? What circumstance are you in? What is the circumstance of your clients? And so maybe if the current approach, you communicating your value to them, isn't working, or your vision or your goals, maybe you should do the complete opposite. Maybe you should be just obsessed with what are their goals, what are their needs, what is their circumstance, and what are they looking to do? What is their problem to be solved? And perhaps how can your expertise and brand and services help them? And
Yeah.
that's not meant to be advice perhaps for your situation, but generally I
Right.
find when something is not working out, it's because we have a very deeply entrenched mindset about how we see it.
Yes.
That's not how someone else sees it.
Yes.
And
I
we
agree
talked
with
about this
that.
for the last hour, right? As the
Yeah.
Kardashians, or why someone's TikTok channel. You
Yeah.
might have to move outside your comfort zone and really challenge your own mindset to say, so I see it this way. How are they seeing it? And do I understand what their need is, their circumstance is? You might provide the same service but different words. You might have a very similar pitch but a different time or with a different angle. So I would just say, sometimes you've got to pivot and disrupt yourself, especially right now, kind of post-pandemic, to the extent we're in the post period. Hopefully we are. To say, I need to come at this fundamentally differently. And maybe you need to broaden your network of colleagues and friends and advisors and coaches and mentor that can perhaps see some of the blind spots you might have around your business, your model, your brand, your passions.
Yeah. Two absolute themes in my podcast for sure. When you say, I'm constantly telling people you're too close to the brand because you are your brand and you're too
Right.
close to it and you can't see it for its flaws. So
Right.
outsource, that's like the number one reason why you outsource. And then getting a mentor. Every single person that I've interviewed on this podcast has a mentor. One, two, three, many throughout their career, and has really been, I think, a lot of times has leaned on them heavily during those hardships, those rough times that we talked about, those messy times, so to speak.
Amen. Me included.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you. I feel like we just scratched the surface of who you are and the way you think about things. And so I definitely want to encourage people to connect with you. How can they do that?
Well, Jill, thank you for the conversation. I've enjoyed getting to know you as well. You can visit me at scottjeffreymiller.com. I've just launched a new book, ironically called Master Mentors, 30 Transformative Insights from Our Greatest Minds. You can follow me on every social platform if you want to connect. And I also am privileged to host the world's largest weekly leadership podcast called On Leadership with Scott Miller. You can subscribe to that. And Jill, it's been nice to getting to know you.
Thank you so much for your time, Scott. I appreciate you.
Great success with your yoga business.
Yeah, thanks. I wish that too. Thank you.
Thank you.